That is the wrong slideshow, so just blank that. And we don't even need a slideshow yet, because you know that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now I want you to stop and think about what you just did. Right, no words on the screen. And that's taken us a couple of weeks. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now you need to give yourself a hand, because you have learned some Bible verses now that you have memorized that you didn't know that you were memorizing. So now, but today, we have to talk about self-control. And I know that is everybody's favorite topic. What does self-control mean? So does self-control mean that I don't eat that second piece of chocolate cake? Or does self-control mean when I go to Dairy Queen, I get a small blizzard instead of a large blizzard? Does it mean that I only buy one pair of shoes or one new outfit instead of two? Does it mean that I maybe wait another year before I purchase an automobile? Does it mean that I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to exercise? And I see some grimaces. Or maybe when I'm running or walking, I'm going to push through to 2 miles instead of just 1 mile. Or does it mean when I see that link on the internet, I choose not to click that? Or when I have an opportunity for an immoral relationship, that I choose not to pursue it? What does Paul mean when he says that the fruit of the Spirit is self-control? If you look up self-control in your Bible, you will find that there are a lot of verses that talk about self-control. There are actually two different word groups that we translate self-control. And we're going to differentiate that just a little bit this morning so that we know exactly what Paul is talking about. The word group that is not used here, so we're going to do the not one first, right? So the word group that is not used here means more like I behave in a sensible manner. It means that I have a right thought about what I'm going to do, or you might translate it to let one's mind guide one's body. And the emphasis of that word is on knowledge. So because of my knowledge, I know how to act in a particular way, so I'm going to act that way. Sometimes we translate that word, instead of self-control, we translate it to be sober or to be temperate. Now the word that he uses here is made up of two words, two Greek words, and basically the very basic meaning of that word is to be in power. It means that you have restraint of your emotions or your thoughts or your actions, that you can exercise control over your body, that maybe you would say you would keep power over your body, or you exert power over yourself. We might say in English you can keep yourself in check, or that you're just really in control. And when you think about losing control, usually that happens pretty gradually. And I think about how that kind of comes across in our world. So you're looking on the internet and you look at, I'm not picking on anybody, okay? So we look at Fox News. And you're looking down in the captions in Fox News, and I don't know what news you look at on the internet. I mean, how many of y'all read news on the internet now, and how many do not? I mean, I don't go buy a newspaper anymore. Every morning I sit down and I click on a couple of news channels and I see what's happening in the world, and I try to pick two from two totally different philosophical backgrounds, all right? But you know, if I'm looking at the news and I scroll down there, if you look down in those bottom sections, there is almost always something down there about so-and-so shows off bikini body. Best beach bodies. There's almost always a link down there that it's not pornographic, but it's just one of those, that's probably just not a good path to go down. You know what happens in our world? Is somebody clicks that link. And they look at that. And then they say, well, I then after looking at that long enough, then that's not really enough. And so they click another link, and then they search another link, and then they Google another link. And before you know it, they're looking at things they ought not to look at. They didn't start out with the intention of getting there, but that's exactly where they ended up. And then they find themselves with total loss of self-control, and they can't keep from trying to research all of that stuff. And then they're just bombarded by guilt, thinking, why am I looking at that stuff? Why can't I quit? Or you see it in our world where somebody goes in for surgery, or they have a pain. Legitimate reasons. And the doctor gives them a pain pill prescription. And let's be honest, at that point in their life with what they're going through, they need that. They need that pain pill prescription. And they take it. And then maybe after they shouldn't take it, they take another one, and they like the way it makes them feel, or that I can't get on all the psychological reasons and the medical reasons because I don't know, but I know it changes the way you think and the way you feel and the way you process. And then I know your body can convince you that you have pain when you don't have pain because it's looking for a drug. And all of a sudden they didn't start off to get addicted to pain medicine, but then later months or years later, they just cannot seem to get out from underneath the pressure of doing that pain medicine. And they didn't start off to be that way, but they just lost self-control. Or it's, they don't have water coolers anymore, right? You can't say there's a water cooler conversation. They still have water coolers in office. I don't work in an office big enough to have a water cooler, okay? So it'd be the kitchen sink conversation at Clarksville Highway. But then there's this connection with somebody, and you didn't really mean to get an emotional connection that you got, but you did, and then you don't know what to do with it, and then let's just go to lunch, and all of a sudden you find yourself in this situation where you shouldn't be, and you don't know how you got there, and you don't have enough self-control to say, I'm not going to be there anymore. And you just lose the ability to have control over your body and a control over your desires. And remember those two words. There's another word in the New Testament that means, it's kind of the opposite of the word that we're looking at. And I don't want to get into a lot of language stuff, but it's kind of a word that means the lack of self-control. And we're going to look at a passage in a minute where they're both used kind of in really close proximity to one another. And sometimes you can't always find out something from a word from outside the Bible, but Aristotle uses those two words when he's talking about something, and this is what he writes. He said, and the self-controlled man, knowing that what he does is bad, does it as a result of desire, while the self-controlled man, knowing that his desires are bad, does not follow them because of the word. Now, let's clarify something in Aristotle. Okay, when Aristotle says the word, he doesn't mean the Bible and he doesn't mean Jesus. Okay, the word for Aristotle, without getting into a lot of that, is it's like his word for rational type thinking. Okay, but here's the difference. When he contrasts those two words, the man without self-control, he knows what he's doing is wrong, but he doesn't have the power to stop. He just does it anyway because he has such incredible desire. The other one, he knows what he's doing is wrong, and he has enough control over his body not to do it. Here's what I want you to understand. Self-control isn't the absence of desire. Self-control changes the way one responds to desire. You see the difference? If I had self-control, I'd never be tempted. You are living in an absolute dream world, as far as I'm concerned, because I'm going to tell you, I have never developed enough self-control that I'm not tempted. I'll just be honest. As a man, okay? I can't talk about women because I ain't one of y'all, okay? Just as a man, all right? You know what? When you're scrolling through that news site and you see that, it takes some self-control not to click down there, doesn't it? Oh, it only takes self-control for people who aren't preachers. Oh, no, I'm just telling you. Does it take self-control? Yes. Yes, it does. You got to be honest with that. It doesn't change the desire. It changes how I respond to the desire. Now, hopefully, one day I will walk so much in tune with God and His Spirit that it'll probably be on the other side of death. Okay, I won't feel that pressure. But I'm telling you, if you say self-control means I'm not going to be tempted, then that's not reality. Aristotle is just exactly right. The man has self-control. The person who has self-control, and he uses man generic there, okay, just man and female, all right? You know, you see the desire, you just have enough self-control that you don't act on it. Now, when Paul tries to illustrate this word, or when Paul uses this word in the New Testament, a lot of times you're right, and you should have self-control. Okay? But there are only two specific examples where he uses this particular word. Here's the first one. But I say to the unmarried and to widows that it is good for them if they remain even as I. Okay, this is 1 Corinthians 7. You remember the conversation? Okay, it's good for a man not to touch a woman, but because of sexual immorality in the world, each man should have his own wife, each woman should have her own husband. Okay, so we'll read that all in a minute. But if they do not have self-control, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. And I did the New American Standard here because it says with passion. Okay? So I don't know which translation you're reading. I really appreciate the New American Standard because they put with passion in italics. If you read a translation, you see something in italics. You know what that means? That means those words are not in the original language, but we put them in there to make better sense out of it, so it makes really good English. Okay, so it's an interpretive type addition. So, to burn with passion. I appreciate the fact that they put with passion because I'm not sure which one he means. I'm not sure if he means to burn with passion, which would be very true, or if he means so that they shouldn't burn in hell, which would also be very true. So I just like the fact they put it in italics, okay? But here, the self-control is, if you don't have the ability to keep yourself in check, then this is what you need to do. Now, as you read that passage, do not get in your head that, well, Paul says the reason people ought to be married is because if they can't control their sexual desires, it's better to do all that stuff within the context of marriage than outside, which is true, but the only reason Paul says to get married is because you can't handle yourself. Okay, don't just read that in there. It's good for a man not to be alone, right? God told us that. It's better to have, in this aspect, to have companionship. But Paul says, okay, if you can't control yourself, and I don't know, I'm just going to say this before we go any further, I don't know if Paul was a widow or if he had never been married. A lot of debate about that. We can debate that some other time, okay? Y'all want to talk about that? Just come see me one day and we'll debate it. And don't look at this and say unmarried and widows, that means women. Okay, because that's not necessarily what, he's not just talking about women. This can apply to women or men, okay, in the way that he uses the words. This is the whole context. Concerning about the things with which you wrote, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. But because of sexual immoralities, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. The husband must fulfill his duty to the wife, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does, and likewise also the husband does not have authority over his own body, the wife does. Stop depriving one another except by agreement for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer and come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Okay, you remember that other word that Aristotle, that we were talking about? There's kind of, one that means self-control, one that means not self-control. That's the one he uses here. Okay? Because of your lack of self-control. But I say this way of concession, not of command. Okay, so you've got this situation where you have to have control over your own body, that you can determine the things that you do and the things that you don't do. Paul uses it again. And he uses it in this context. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. I want you to think with me for just a second. All right, we're going to think outside just the Bible box for just a second. If I were to ask you, now some of you won't know what this means. Okay, so it doesn't have anything to do with your intelligence level. It has to do with the world in which you live. Okay, but who is the quarterback GOAT? Anybody know what GOAT means? Greatest of all time. Yeah. So who's the quarterback GOAT in NFL football? Just throw me some answers. What? Joe Montana. Johnny Unitas. Who? Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, but just quit dancing around it, brothers. Reggie, who do most people say the GOAT is? Tom Brady. Most people say the GOAT is Tom Brady. Diane's in the back going, no, Peyton, baby, Peyton. Okay, I'm with you, honey. Oh, you're a Tennessee fan. Peyton, you know. Who is the greatest basketball player? Michael Jordan. Oh, yeah. Or LeBron James. Dr. J. We have this friend, he's passed away now, but he played professional basketball, and one day he was a tall guy. How tall was he, Charlie? Like 6'8"? Oh, he's tall. He said, Dr. J, I standing there in practice one day, my hands up, and Dr. J jumped completely over me, and I'm like, that is a man right there. You know, Dr. J. Remember when he used to jump from the free throw line? Woo! I mean, Michael Jordan, he was Michael Jordan. Dr. J. Yeah? Do we put sports people on pedestals? I mean, way up here. Do we? It's okay. Just go ahead and say it. Yes, we do. Did you ever thought about Paul's world? Man, I had to write some of this down because I'm just not smart enough to remember it, okay? Astylos won 6 olive wreaths in 3 Olympiads. Milton was one of the most famous. He was a 6-time Olympic wrestling champion. Melanomus was a boxing champion who was, this just blows my mind, and you wonder, this is one of those things you think, is history really true? He was this incredible boxing champion who defeated his opponents without ever getting hit and ever striking a blow at the other guy. He was just like limber, and I guess he just danced around Charlie till they couldn't fight anymore. But he was like, champion after championship after championship after championship. Kinsika was the first woman listed as an Olympiad champion. Now, you realize that women could not compete, right? If you're a free man, you can compete. So it doesn't matter what your social class is. If you're a free man and you're good enough, you can compete in the games. Women cannot attend or compete. How in the world did she win? Did she get to be champion? Because in the equestrian events, the trophy, the wreath, didn't go to the rider. It went to the owner. And she was the owner. So it was the 4-horse chariot race that she won. It wasn't just Greeks in Olympics, was it? I mean, as barbaric as it sounds, the Romans loved to go watch the gladiators. There was one gladiator, he was so famous, Spiculus, and most of the gladiators, by the way, were slaves. They were not free men. Spiculus was just this incredible champion. And if you were good enough, there was a little wooden cross, a little wooden sword you could get. It had a name, and I can't remember what the name of it was. But if you could get that, then you could be a free man. So if you're a good enough gladiator and you get this little wooden sword, when you retire, if you live that long, you're a free man. This guy was so good. Remember when Nero was going to kill himself? According to history, he actually sent people to look for this guy because he wanted this guy to kill him because he thought so much of him. And they couldn't find him, so he committed suicide instead. There were others who would fight. Flamma fought over a period of 13 years. I mean, just think about a football career. You think about a gladiator. 13 years as a gladiator. You're pretty tough if you do that, right? You know the incredible thing when you start looking at history? We can find vessels that have their names engraved on them, or an image engraved on them, or a caption engraved to them. Do you get that? Do you get that? Chrissy, what's your favorite sports team? So you got anything that's got San Francisco 49ers on it? Oh, you do? Okay, good. I was going to put that on JR's Christmas list if you didn't have it. All right. Anybody got apparel that's got their favorite team? Yeah, don't tell it, brother. Don't tell it. Just keep at us. Keep unity in the church. Let's just not talk about that. Man, or a mug, or a license plate, or a hat, or a something. But we wear our colors with pride, don't we? Do you think Paul's world is any different? Man, they are elevating these. Shaw said it great this morning. We were talking about, he said they were the closest thing to them, to God on earth, that they could find. And that's what they saw them as, sometimes deity on the earth. They probably honored them even more than we choose to honor our athletes, if you can even think that's amazing. They did it kind of by worship and gratitude. We just keep throwing money at them. Pausanias said this: athletes who are going to participate in the Olympic Games swore on oath. Okay, they didn't swear to God, so this is the pagan religion type part. Okay, they swore by oath on the slices of boar's flesh that in nothing will they sin against the Olympic Games. The athlete takes this further also. For 10 successive months, they have strictly followed the regulations for training. Tertullian wrote, athletes are set apart for more rigid training to apply themselves to the building up of their physical strength. They are kept from lavish living, from more tempting dishes, from more pleasurable drinks. They are urged on and are subjected to tortuous toils. They are worn out. The more strenuously they have exerted themselves, the greater is their hope of victory. In our language, we just say, no pain, no gain. Paul writes that to a group of people who understood what it was for an athlete to go into training and to give everything that he had to accomplish a purpose. And they do it for a perishable crown, but we an imperishable crown. Not to be controlled by anything. By anything. Everything is permissible, but I will not allow myself to be controlled by anything. And how does Paul talk about that? King James language, I buffet my body daily. The word for I wear it out. I wear my body out. I make it my slave. I keep it under control so that after preaching to others, I will find myself to be the kind of person who loses the fight. Do you have self-control? Man, that's a struggle, isn't it? I mean, when you ask that question, you get real honest with yourself. Do you really have self-control? You know, Paul follows that with this, remember all of these examples that we're supposed to remember, right? They were written for our understanding too, because they got involved in sexual immorality and look what happened to them. They got involved in idolatry and look what happened to them. And we write these things so that you will not follow evil desires. And man, that gets to be a hard message, because you're asking people, can you control your body? Can you control what you do? Do you have self-control? And most of us will stand up and say, oh yeah, man, I got it. Woo! You know, we do, and then we look at different areas of our life and you think, man, maybe I don't have it that much there. And sometimes you think, well, that's just a little thing, Greg. Yeah, sometimes it's just a little thing, but sometimes little things can lead into bigger things. So last night, I'm getting ready to watch Memphis. Memphis basketball is coming on. You know, now Memphis basketball I'm going to watch. Well, I'm just sitting there thinking, hey, Memphis basketball is coming on. You know what goes good with Memphis basketball? Anybody know? Ice cream. Ice cream goes good with Memphis basketball. So I said, it wasn't a question. Hey, baby, I'm going to the store and get me some ice cream. Now, I didn't get one half guy. I got two, because we got different tastes in ice cream. So, now, you think, well, that's kind of a small thing, Greg. That's just ice cream. Well, it's only a small thing if I could say, you know what, I'm not going to have that. And you say, well, could you have? And I say, well, yeah, I could have not had ice cream last night. But then I think, man, could I really not had ice cream? And I know that's just a little thing. Or is it such a little thing? Is it such a little thing? That little thing that's in the back of your head that you think, well, I could quit doing that if I really wanted to. Could you really quit doing it if you really wanted to? And if it's a question for you, why haven't you already quit doing it? And I'm not talking about just I'm not talking about a second piece of chocolate cake. See, we don't mind talking about second pieces of chocolate cake, but how about if we start talking about, can I keep my emotions in check when I get angry? Or can I even keep myself in check enough that I don't get angry? Can I keep my emotions in check enough that I treat other people godly? How about if it's just a little spiritual discipline? But are there really any little spiritual disciplines? Well, I could read my Bible every morning if I wanted to. Could you really? Man, I think I ought to spend some time alone with God. Do you? Hey, brother, don't you start pulling out those fasting verses. Ugh. Could you? Could you? And not only could you, would you? Well, Jesus never commanded me to fast. No, I'm good with you. But by golly, he sure talked about it a lot, didn't he? Could you do that? Would you do that? Can you exercise self-control? Can you control your emotions and your thoughts and your body and your actions so that you can be godly? But remember, why are we talking about fruit of the Spirit? What did it start with? Man, there's a struggle between flesh and spirit, isn't it? There is this intense struggle going on where God is calling me to be holy and I'm living in an unholy world. And can I keep myself in check enough to be holy? And here's... No. No. Without God's help. You ever gone out and said, I'm not going to do that again, and you try by your own power to overcome some behavior and you find out you just do not have it within yourself to do it by yourself? And then we wait to the very last minute and we say, God, you got to help me with this. Why don't you reverse that whole process and start with God and let Him help you from the beginning instead of the end? Instead of just talking about the Holy Spirit and saying, well, yeah, there are those fruits of the Spirit, and God gives us the Spirit, baptized and you'll receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. Oh, yeah, the Holy Spirit. How about instead of just kind of talking about the Holy Spirit, you sit down and say, okay, God, listen, here's what I need. I need you to help me control myself to be led by your Spirit. How about can you help me listen? Can you help me be aware? Can you sit down and pray, God, what I really want you to do is I want you to really make me feel bad when I start to do something I ought not to do. Or I want you to prevent me from doing it. God, if I start down the wrong path, I need you to turn the lights out. Well, we don't want to pray stuff like that, do we? Or do we? Because here's the battle, the struggle of spirit and flesh. And as long as I am living and breathing on this earth, I promise you I am going to have a struggle with spirit and flesh. I don't know where you are in that journey. Some of you are sitting there and thinking, man, I have no idea what he's talking about. Some of you are sitting there and saying, man, I wish that guy'd quit preaching to me every Sunday. But I know if you're going to start that healing process of finding relationship with God, You have to put one foot in front of the other and come before brothers and sisters in Jesus and say, I need help. I need help. And sometimes in churches we look at each other and say, man, I'm not going in front of a whole bunch of perfect people who say, and then say I need help, because they all got it all together. Can we just do something right now? Okay? Can all of you say, I do not have it together? Just hear it. I do not have it together. Now, if you got it together, you don't have to say it, okay? But if you don't, just say, I do not have it together. Can we just say, if you do not have it together, I won't judge you either. If you don't have it together, I won't judge you either, right? I will not judge you more harshly than I am willing to judge myself. How about we start there? I am not willing to judge you more harshly than I am willing to judge myself. Can we at least understand that we are a group of people struggling through a world trying to be godly in an ungodly world, and it is not easy, and you can preach on self-control all you want, but man, it is just an absolute struggle. And you don't do it by yourself. You cannot do it by yourself. You cannot just decide, I am going to be better. You have to have God's Spirit working in your life. You have to have godly men and women who are holding you accountable. And you have to have people who are praying for you every day, or you will not make it. Ever. Ever. The only way to find peace with God is to completely give yourself to God. And if that's where you are today, I'm going to ask you to come while we stand and sing.